He that is first in his own cause seemeth just, but his neighbor cometh and searcheth him. That is Proverbs 18:17. And this is Resisting Balaam, a podcast where we seek to encourage the saints to stand firm with him on his word against all of the accusations made by the world, the flesh, and the devil, as we engage the culture of death that demands the sacrifice of our children. I am Callie, and I want to thank you for tuning in to this episode. I hope you find it helpful. Make sure to like and share this, and check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/resisting Balaam. Help us to continue to create and distribute content like this. Today, I'm going to be talking about the live birth statistics that just came out, specifically for Texas. So I wanted to do this episode, I don't know, maybe about 6 weeks or so ago, 2 months, when the data was released, and I didn't. And part of the reason why I didn't do this episode then is because my conclusion was that there really just is not enough data and good enough analysis of population growth and the models that we need to make an accurate and clear claim that the pro-life healthcare laws that were placing a burden on a woman's access to abortion in September of last year had an effect on the live births in Texas. We really do need better growth models, population models, to look at all of the various circumstances and the variables that cause an increase in birth. But the reason why I was looking at that data back then and now was when Texas first instituted that healthcare law that severely restricted, limited, obstructed, placed a burden on a woman's access to abortion in the formal healthcare system. We came out against it because it's an unjust law, regardless of whatever physical effects it has. And nobody's denying that a burden has been placed on a woman's access to abortion in the healthcare facilities. I mean, it's plain to see, just looking at the abortion data, that 60% of abortions in the healthcare system stopped from that healthcare law. And then now with the trigger bill, all of the healthcare facilities that kill children have been closed. Nobody's doubting that. But our argument against the heartbeat bill is that it's unjust, that it seeks to limit, regulate the sanctioning of unjust killing of humans by treating it as health care rather than treating it as homicide, which it is. So I didn't do that episode then, though I looked at the numbers. And while we were coming against these healthcare laws, we were citing things about its effectiveness, even though that's not why we're coming against it, but dealing with the evidence at hand, dealing with their arguments and shutting the mouth of the fool. We would talk about things such as child sacrifice tourism, the 450 plus abortions that were being done out of state to Texans. Now, that both equal justice and healthcare laws have to deal with that. So I'm not saying that it wouldn't happen under equal justice bills, but they're numbers that we have to deal with. We also were talking about the rise in self-managed abortion through aid access, the 6 other major online telemed services in Europe using pharmacies in like India and whatever, as well as some of the other pop-ups that have come through Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Reddit, and various streams of distribution that have been set up by the self-managed abortion industry with pill abortions using both regimen of mifepristone and misoprostol, as well as just a misoprostol regimen. So not just the brand name medications that are being brought in through various ways, but also the generics that are generally used in the pharmacies out of India and things like that, but also counterfeit pills that are being brought up through Mexico and all of that. And we were talking about how those pills adjust for the restrictions that are placed on a woman's access to abortion in the healthcare facility. And one of the arguments that was brought up against us while we were raising those is just wait until the birth rates come out. That will put to bed how effective these healthcare laws are. That the lack of abortions that are being done in the healthcare system will register in the live births when it comes out. And that's how we'll see how effective they are. So I started looking at the live birth data, like I said, about 6 weeks ago, maybe 2 months ago, when it came out. And there really is not enough data. We need more data, and we need better models of population growth to really make that claim, and to be fair, to refute that claim as well. But last night, Live Action News posted about the live births in Texas. And they reference this analysis done by Charlotte Lozier Institute. And because of this, they're claiming that thousands, probably about 5,000 increase in live births over the period of March to July, so through June, we saw an increase of 5,000 excess live births in Texas. And so I felt it necessary to actually go through that data because it's kind of misleading. I'm not saying that there wasn't an increase of 5,000 live births in that time period of March through June, because there were. But what I am saying is I'm not convinced that those live births can be equated to the imposition, the obstacles, the burden that is placed on a woman's access to abortion in healthcare facilities in Texas. And I'll show why. I do find it interesting that they started with March and didn't go through January of this year, which is what I'm going to do, because it kind of puts some of this into context a little better. But before I start, let me say I am not a statistician, right? I have zero expertise in population growth at all. I don't know about the models. I don't know how they do it. I don't know all of the variables that come into place. All I'm doing is making observations based off of abortion data and live birth data that is reported to DHS Texas and CDC. And these are the same numbers that were used in the Charlotte Lozer Institute analysis. You can go get them on those websites, download the spreadsheets for DHS Texas and the CDC, and they're the exact same numbers that were used in their analysis. The phrasing of how they talked about getting the data was really interesting. They talked about personally receiving the data from the state. Anybody can get it. Just go to the DHS website and there's links to get the abortion data as well as the live birth data. So I do think we need more data and professionals that know how to do this type of analysis to really get down to the impact that these healthcare laws and the closing of healthcare facilities have had on the birth rate. The next thing I want to say is that I am grateful for every child that has not been killed, regardless of the reason that they weren't killed. I do maintain that pro-life abortion healthcare laws are evil. They're an expression of sinful partiality. They are unjust. They define and treat abortion as healthcare, and they seek to limit, to restrict, to place a burden on a woman's access to abortion in the healthcare system rather than treat abortion as homicide. I do believe that these healthcare laws do prevent some deaths, but I do not believe that they prevent as many deaths as these pro-life organizations, their media arms, and the legislators are claiming. My argument against these healthcare laws are not about how effective they are, but rather that they are unjust. All that said, we need to be honest in what we present and what we say and what we do, because truth and honesty really does matter. And I do want to deal with how effective these healthcare laws are in preventing deaths. So like I said, I don't have any type of experience in this type of analysis. I have no models for how population growth is analyzed. So I'm not going to account for things like trends in fertility rates, the numbers that are growing or decreasing of women that are ages 14 to 44, which is how the population growth is usually talked about. It's not talked about in raw data of numbers of live births, but rather a percentage of live births per 1,000 childbearing age women, so 14 to 44. So usually they talk about growth rates with the number of live births per women between 14 and 44. And I'm not going to use in this evaluation the effect that the COVID's restrictions have had on it, birth control, immigration or migration, inflation, or any of these social or economic considerations that do go along with population modeling. For the sake of this, I'm going to do what their analysis did and just look at the growth as being static. Right? I'm only going to look at the variables that affect the live birth being these healthcare laws that restrict a woman's access to abortion in the healthcare system. So like I said, I am using numbers that are reported by Texas DHS and the CDC. It's the same exact spreadsheets that this institute used. So you can go to the CDC website, you can go to DHS and get these same numbers. Now, what I originally had planned on doing is going several years back to see trends. But what happens when they report these numbers is a couple of different things. They use provisional numbers for 2 years, and those provisional numbers are month by month, right? So for the past 2 years, we have January, February, all separated by month. Once it leaves its provisional status, it gets aggregated into a yearly birth number as well as rates. And then they have all kinds of data surrounding the birth rates and death rates, and you can get all of that as well. But it's really hard to get the month by month of years before the provisional status ends up. So I'm only going to be using the provisional month by month one, which is exactly what that institute did in their analysis. So we're using the same numbers and the same time period. The other thing that's really odd about birth rate numbers is I found a discrepancy of about 10 to 17,000 depending on the year. And that is based off of Texas residents versus non-residents that give birth in Texas. So if you're just like passing through on vacation and have a baby, that gets counted. And then once the provisional status is over, they get separated into a different category, right? Like if you're in the military and you're at Fort Hood, but you maintain New York residency, it counts as a non-resident birth. But the provisional numbers that go month by month for 2 years, they don't have it separated. It's all live births, whether you're a Texas resident or not. And that's actually pretty good because the abortion numbers that are being promoted through the state are likewise not based off of Texas resident or not. It's just all the way. So one of the things that I'll be doing as I go through these numbers, if I need to round a number or make a decision on how to evaluate a set of numbers, I'm going to lean to the side that is advantageous to the effectiveness of these healthcare laws. I'm going to put the effectiveness of the healthcare laws in the best light possible. So if I have to make a decision on rounding a number up or down, I'm going to round it towards the law being more effective in preventing death or more births happening. Whatever is going to be more advantageous to make the effectiveness of these healthcare laws, I'm going to put them in the best optimal case as we look through this. So when it does come to child sacrifice tourism, I am going to use the numbers that DHS reported for out-of-state abortion. And they list about 1,700 for the months of September through December 2021, which is the time that the heartbeat bill was in place for the numbers that they have released. There are studies that say that the numbers are actually higher, and from talking with friends who have been out at clinics in Oklahoma and a couple of other places, the numbers are kind of staggering. But I want to stay consistent on which numbers I'm using, so I will use the DHS numbers, and that comes out to about 450 per month. Now, like I said before, these numbers are going to be the same, whether it's a bill of equal justice or some unjust healthcare law. It's just the reality that, in this case, 450 a month go out of state to kill their children. And but the reason I'm bringing it up is when we're looking at live births in Texas, those numbers have to be accounted for. So what's interesting is in this analysis that was done on these numbers, they play down the self-reporting numbers from abortion clinics. But that's where we get the numbers of abortions to begin with. I mean, I agree. Not every state has to report abortions, and every state that doesn't report abortion doesn't have to report medical abortion versus surgical abortions. And the abortion industry is liars. I get that. But you can't say that we're not going to trust the out-of-state self-reporting numbers, but we're going to use the in-state self-reporting numbers. So I'm just going to deal with the fact that there's reported 450 out-of-state abortions by Texas residents a month, because that's what the same abortion government official documents are saying. I'm also going to be using the generic 40 weeks of pregnancy. Yes, some children are born early, some children are born late, but we have to have a standard number to use. And it appears that that's exactly what the Institute's analysis did as well. You used a flat 40-week count for pregnancy. I'm not going to go through thousands of cases just to measure which ones were 36 weeks, which ones were 38, which ones were 42. We're just going to take an average 40. Also, we need to recognize that there's a 2-week difference between fertilization and how we count pregnancy in the medical industry based off of the last period. The menstrual cycle off of a 2-week from ovulation to when the woman has her period changes the gestational pregnancy numbers from where they count. And that's all before they do the ultrasounds and all that. So just want to say out there from the get-go, when you're counting pregnancy weeks, it's not based off of fertilization or conception. It is based off of 2 weeks after that, usually. The last thing that I'm going to be doing as I go through this is we're going to assume that every child that is killed in healthcare facilities or prevented from being killed in healthcare facilities would have gone to term and been born, right? So we're not going to count for any miscarriages, stillbirths, or any problems such as that. We're again, this is going to lean on the side of the effectiveness of these healthcare laws. So we're going to assume that every child that is not killed in these healthcare facilities for our numbers would have made it to term, and been born. All right. So what this Institute's analysis did was to start in May, because that's where you would start seeing the effects of the heartbeat bill, right? And they add up all of the excess live births, May, June, it's 3 months worth. April, May, June, I think. I have to go back and look at their analysis. No, it is March. March, April, May, and June. And they add up all of the excess live births, and they come out with just over 5,000 excess live births in that time period. And they say that, okay, the abortions have been cut in half, and that's about 5,000. So those numbers match up. That's how many, it's a good estimation to say that 5,000-ish children have been saved and are born because of this healthcare law that restricts a woman's access to abortion in healthcare facilities. But it kind of, like we said before, it doesn't take into consideration anything else. And they mention that in their analysis, that they're not accounting for mass amounts of immigration and all of these other things in there. But I want to put that number into context, that 5,000 over March through June. Because, I mean, they're true. That is accurate. That is how many excess live births go. But if you go back to January and go month by month, there's something else that happens that needs to be talked about, because it, I do know why. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say they start in March, because that's when the heartbeat bill would have affected those births. But I'm going to start in January, and I'll show you why. In January 2021, there were 28,255 live births. And in January of this year, there were 31,339 births. So in January alone, there was an increase of 3,084 live births. The heartbeat bill that went into effect in September had absolutely zero impact on those births. Because all of the children that were born in January would have been conceived in the weeks leading up to somewhere around April 26, 2021. And they would have all been between 20 and 24 weeks gestation by September, when the heartbeat bill went into effect. So they wouldn't have been affected by the heartbeat bill anyways, because there was already a 20-week ban. So it would have had zero effect on births in January. But yet in January alone, there was an increase of 3,084 live births. That's important, because if you're going to start talking about 2 months later and then aggregate a series of 4 months and say there were 5,000 extra live births in that 4-month period, but you're going to ignore the 3,084 live birth increase 2 months earlier, that's a problem. I think we need to put this into context to see the month-by-month increases and how much effect this healthcare law really had. So it had zero effect in January. They've admitted that, we know that, but at that same time period, January saw an increase of 3,084 live births. February. February 2021 had 26,642 live births, and in 2022 there were 28,800. So there was an increase in February of 2,154 live births. Now, the children that were born in that month would have been conceived roughly around May of 2021. And they would have been 16 to 20 weeks when the heartbeat bill was executed in September of 21. So on average in the year 2021, if you round up, 80 children a month are killed in that age range, 16 to 20 weeks. So in February, there was an increase of 2,158 live births, but only 80 children would have been affected by the heartbeat bill at that point. And that's if all 80 children made it to term, right? So we're just talking about the children that would have been affected by the heartbeat bill in September, born in February. It would have had an effect on about 80 of those abortions. Children born in March. There were, in 2021, 30,184 live births, and in 2022 of March, 32,138. So there was an increase of 1,954 live births between March 2021 and March 2022. So if you just look at those 3 months right there, you're looking at over 7,000, close to 7,500 extra live births, but the number of children that would have been affected by that is much less. So for example, the children that are born in March would have been 12 to 16 weeks when the heartbeat bill went into effect in September. So that affects about 220 children in that age range. But also now you have to account for the heartbeat bill also being in effect in October, which is another 80 of those children. So an overall 300 children would have been affected by the heartbeat bill that were born in March of 2022. 300. But we still saw an increase of live births of 1,954. Keep in mind, this does not include the 450 a month that are going out of state to kill their children. And it's assuming that the number of self-managed abortion is negligible. And you still saw an increase of 1,954, even though only 300 of the abortions for that month's worth of live births would have been affected. Now, when you start getting into April, the numbers start getting a lot bigger, all right? But at the same time, the number of children affected goes up. The number of live births goes down, right? So in April of 2021, there were 28,498 live births, and in 2022, there were 29,735. So that gives us an increase of 1,237 live births. The children that are born in April of this year would have been in the 9 to 12 week range when the heartbeat bill went into effect, right? So that means that 600 children were affected by the heartbeat bill in September. And if you go to the next month, October, and the next month, December, you get a total of 850 children that would have been born in April of 2022 being affected by the heartbeat bill. You also have that 450 out of state. And you have only an increase of 1,237. So, I mean, there is something that's causing an increase in live births. We saw an increase of 3,000 in January, and it wasn't the heartbeat bill. We saw an increase of over 2,000 in February, and again, it wasn't the heartbeat bill. We saw an increase now in April of only 1,200, and 850 children would have been affected by that healthcare law. So there is something that's causing an increase, but I don't think that we can isolate it to the healthcare law itself. So May, there was an increase of 1,130 live births in 2022 over 2021. This puts those children on the September 1st institution of the heartbeat bill between 4 and 7 weeks. Now we're gonna, for the sake of ease of numbers and leaning towards the effectiveness of this law, we're gonna say 6 weeks because that's where they cut off the heartbeat bill was at 6 weeks. So we're gonna pretend that all of them were under 6 weeks and not half of them or 3/4 of them, okay? So on average, 2,500 children would have been affected in September that would have been born in May. But then you gotta add the ones that would have been killed in October, November, December, and etc. And that brings the number to 3,300 children would have been affected by the heartbeat bill. We only saw an increase of 1,130 live births. But the number of children affected by that healthcare law was more than double that. And that's also not including the 450 out of state. And that's assuming that the self-managed abortion numbers are negligible. And then in June, we have an increase of live births at 1,113. And again, you'll have the same number of children affected by the heartbeat bill at 3,300. So is there an increase in live births? Yes. Was there an increase of live births from March to June like their paper said? Yes. Does that number correspond to 5,000 children not being killed in the healthcare facilities? I don't think so. So when you look at the increase of live births in January, February, and March that were not affected, and you still had over 7,000 extra live births in those 3 months, we have to assume that there is something that is increasing the live births in Texas that were not attributed to that healthcare law. So when we do that, and we see that 450 of those children that were affected by the heartbeat bill went somewhere else, and the live births per month only increased by about 1,000, maybe a little bit more than 1,000. It should be obvious that you cannot make the claim that 5,000 children are being born because of this healthcare law that restricted access to abortion in healthcare facilities. You have to make too many assumptions that self-managed abortion is not even happening or is happening negligibly. Now, I agree. The 50 a day people in Texas alone that are requesting pills from Aid Access alone, we can't say that they're all actually taking the pill and killing their children. I agree with that. We can say that 50 women a day in Texas alone, through only one self-managed abortion stream, are requesting those pills. That's 50 a day. We were only killing 175 a day in the healthcare facility. 50 is not an insignificant number, especially if we're talking about only one distribution stream, and there are many. There's many telemed and foreign pharmacies. There is on the line pop-ups that are coming. All you got to do is look up the hashtag aid and abet, and it is easy to find various streams of multiple types of self-managed abortion pills, right? So some of them are doing the 2-pill regimen that is being done in healthcare facilities, and some are just doing misoprostol. Some are doing generics, some are doing counterfeit from Mexico. So, we can't really ignore those as being negligible or not happening. We also can't ignore the 450 plus that are going out of state. And when we look at the live births, we can say there's been an increase in live births, but the data does not show that those live births can directly be attributed to this healthcare law that posed a burden on a woman's access to abortion in the healthcare system. The data just does not say that. And especially when you look at an even longer term, not just even January through June, but if you go back even another year, you see this trend of increase in live births. And so I'm not saying that there are not children that are born today as a result of these healthcare laws. I do believe there are some. I do not believe that it's the numbers that these pro-life organizations, that this analysis institute put, it's a fabrication. It's just not true. It's manipulating numbers to make it sound like closing these healthcare facilities had a 100 or near 100% effective rate. The numbers just don't say that. I think they're grossly overstating how effective their healthcare laws are on live births in particular. But like I said, we're going to need people that do population growth models that take into account all of these other factors. But even just looking at abortion numbers and live birth numbers and the increase and decrease of the both of them, they do not correlate to the increase of live births being attributed to either mainly, solely, or primarily to these healthcare laws that are restricting access to a woman's abortion in the healthcare system. I hope you find this helpful. It's a hard one to deal with because it's a lot of numbers, and trying to sift through and analyze them is not the easiest thing to do. But we need to be honest with our critique against the pro-life movement, but we also have to expose when they are not being accurate. And I'm not going to say that they're not being honest, because I want to believe that this isn't an intentional misleading, but rather a hopeful inaccuracy on their part to say that their laws are doing something that they're just really not doing. So I hope you find this helpful. Like and share it. Get this one out. And until next time, join the resistance and wield the sword of truth. Our Lord has left us here to navigate through this world as priests in the kingdom of God. Apply the mind of Christ in battle against the culture that hates God and loves death.